So today's topic is the trifecta of trust. And I saw an interesting study recently that PricewaterhouseCoopers did, a CEO survey, and they found that 55% of CEOs reported that the lack of trust was a serious threat to their organization's growth.
That's amazing.
It is. And I think it's kind of safe to say that we all agree, trust is pretty important to our work environment, to work relationships. So we thought it worthy of our discussion today.
Well, and we're really going to highlight the importance of trust. And we think it's the salt and sugar of leadership. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
I like that. So before we jump into this content, for those of you that have just joined, I want to invite you to take our Trifecta of Trust survey. And so you can see the instructions there on your screen. You're going to type into a new browser window, bit.ly/ZFTrust. That is case sensitive. We also have the link in the chat window. You can just click it there and it will take you right over. And so we invite you to go ahead and do that. Self-assessments can kind of get a bad rap for being inaccurate tools. And this is generally true when you're using self-assessment data to measure proficiency. However, we've really found that self-assessments are really helpful providing insights when measuring what you prefer. We found that people are pretty good at judging what they like and don't like. Isn't that right, Joe?
I'm the expert. I know what I like.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. My kids, one of them hates tomatoes. And I'm like, that's not rational. But it's like, I know what I like.
And what's helpful about that in the learning environment is that knowing your preferences, knowing what you like, or in some cases what you don't, can be really helpful piece of self-awareness data when we're looking at specific behaviors and how we can do better at specific behaviors like trust, which is what we're going to talk about today.
And Jared, that's a real quick self-assessment.
Yep. So we'll let you have some time. If you've just joined us, go ahead and please do that. We'll make sure you get your results a little bit later on. So Joe, what can the audience expect from today's webinar?
Well, one of the things that we know as we talk to our clients are all saying the same thing. They say, you know what? Our leaders want a real quick learning. They don't have enough time to sit for a day. They really want it in a very compressed kind of an experience. And so what we're going to present today is something we call a micro-learning experience. And one of the things that scares me about our current development culture is when I ask groups of people, how many of you have a development plan you're currently working on? What we find is only about 10% of leaders and individual contributors have an active development plan. And in my view, what happens when you do that is people work, but they don't learn. You have the opportunity to grow great leaders, but they're only going to grow. They're only going to learn if they have a development plan, if there's focused kind of effort around it. Now, if you want to learn to be a great golfer, you need to go golfing, right? But if you want to be a great leader, you are in a practice arena because you don't have to leave work to practice. You are there and you can practice at work and you can learn at work, but only if you're intentional about your development. Now, what we've created here is a learning experience. We're going to back it up with Zinger-Folkman research and insights that we've gained. We've got a self-assessment that we're going to deliver to you to enhance that learning experience and really help you understand your preference for one thing over another. And we find that if we can share these insights and you can share insights with each other, then you can also we're going to provide you with some tools to help you create a development plan. So the idea of this particular learning experience is for you to experience some insight about trust, for you to get a self-assessment and then create a development plan, and you walk away in 1 hour with a plan and a focus on development that could help you. And we think this could help every department I know of has a meeting once a year. And I challenge everybody out there to say, if you're going to have a department meeting, you need to have 1 hour of learning that goes along with that department meeting. If you're going to have an event in a company and you want to enhance that event, have a learning experience to go along with it. And we think this could be a really valuable experience. Now, a lot of webinars, you sit back and you just listen. Hey, in this webinar, I need you to work, okay? And once again, I'm just going to say this. If you haven't logged in, log in right now, bit.ly/ZF Trust. You can do that while we talk, and good luck with that.
So let's jump in. The first question here, how does trust impact you? And trust can be one of those things that's difficult to put your finger on, right? There's this kind of logical process of weighing pros and cons, but there's also this real emotional instinct that we have about people or things. And you know, you often hear someone say, I don't know why, but I don't trust that person. But we clearly know when trust isn't present and that it's really critical for success for it to be present. So Joe mentioned we need you to do some work today. And so part of that is we like you to participate in these live polls that we do. It's a great chance for us to get your input and your insights and for you to kind of see the opinions of the entire audience. So to join the polling, you have two options. You can join by going to this URL, and you can do that on any mobile device or by opening a new browser window. And that's pollev.com/ZFpoll. And again, we'll also put that link available in the chat window, so you can just click on it there if that's easier. The second option is that you can join by text message, and you can do this by texting the keyword ZF poll, all together, ZF poll, to the number 22333. And if joining by text, you don't need to click any of the links. You'll get a response back that says, "Welcome to Zenger Folkman's meeting." And then all you have to do from that point is just continue to submit your answers via texting. You won't need to click any links in the text messages.
And you don't need to download the app either.
You do not need to download the app either. I'm sure Poll Everywhere would love it if you downloaded their app on your phone, but it's not necessary. Okay, so we want to start out just to make sure everybody gets a sense of how this works with a practice poll. Our practice poll today is, which type of chocolate do you prefer? And you've got dark chocolate there on the top, then milk chocolate, white chocolate, and this is as irrational as Joe's kids not liking tomatoes. Is there anyone out there that doesn't like chocolate?
Yeah, wow, they're Martians or alien species? I don't know. Well, this is great. The numbers are coming in.
Not a lot of fans of white chocolate.
No,
not a lot of fans of white chocolate. And I totally understand that. That is purely rational. All right, our next poll, thank you for participating and kind of testing this out. Our next poll here is a slightly different in that we want you to now click on or enter in the key letter there for all of these statements that you agree with. And so you can see them on your screen. Some employees don't trust the organization I work for. There are managers in our organization that aren't trusted. In my personal life, there are people I don't trust. I have concerns about trust with a colleague. Some colleagues have concern about trust with me. In my personal life, some people do not trust me. And then finally, I don't know if some people distrust me. So which of these, mark any of these statements that you agree with.
This is really hard when you think about it, because as I looked at this, it looks like the results are coming in. There's a lot of agreement to almost all of these. And if you didn't agree to the last one, I think you're being self-deceived.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you don't think it's like, I don't know, but it's highly likely that somebody distrusts you.
Yeah. And it's pretty clear that trust impacts many part of our lives, right? I mean, we've got work-oriented questions, personal life-oriented questions. Okay, so thank you for your participation, and we'll continue to use some of these polls throughout the webinar today.
Well, we want to start off with some questions about trust. And the first one is what is trust? We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to really focus on this question of how effective are we at assessing our own level of trust? Do you know? And you might have been only answered a few of those questions about trust on the previous poll. But our research is going to give you some surprising findings about how effective, do you really know how trusted you are? Who's the most trusted and least trusted? Old, young, male, female. That's interesting. How important is trust as a leader and the impact it has? We have some surprising results there. It's where we're going to talk about the salt and sugar of trust and how do we build trust. The point of this whole conversation today is the idea that we can, and through our research, we've identified 3 ways that you can really improve your personal trust. We're going to discuss that a bit. So what is trust? The dictionary definition is a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. And what's interesting about trust is if you have trust in someone or something, or even in a belief, it makes you vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So yesterday, I gave somebody a credit card for over $1,000. I've never talked to them before. It was for a massage chair. By the way, number one thing you need in your house is a massage chair. I mean, it's as important as a dishwasher or a washing machine. I mean, this is really, if you don't have one, get one. But they're expensive, and this one's broken a little bit. And I gave them this code, and these people called up and said, that'll be $1,000. And I go, how do you know that's the right part? And they said, well, it should fix it. And then they said that magic word, trust me. I did. But it's interesting, as you accept that vulnerability, you could get taken advantage of, right? And that's the interesting thing about trust, is it makes us vulnerable to that. And I think it's really, really important. There's 3 basic things that trust does for us, for society, really. It makes life predictable. We know what's coming next. It creates a sense of community. Any of you who've worked in an environment where there was distrust, you know how that feels. It doesn't feel good. And people, they're kind of, you don't know who to trust and who to don't trust. And all of a sudden you get this paranoia, right, comes over you. And in a community where you have trust, it just feels a lot better, and your community is safe. It also makes it easier for people to work together. Now, Stephen M. R. Covey wrote a fascinating book, and he called it The Speed of Trust. When I first picked up that book, and I know Stephen well, he is great, I thought, that's a weird title, The Speed of Trust. Now, that title came out of an experience he had working in a merged corporation where his group merged with another corporation, and he was working with people from both sides of the merger. And it describes this incredibly difficult experience of trying to get this group to work together. And what was fascinating to him was how long it took for them to work together. And because it took a lot of time, it cost a lot of money, and they were a lot less successful. Well, he, created this book and its impression from this experience. And what we did is actually measured it. We, a few years ago, wrote a book called Speed. And in that, we measured the speed at which leaders work. We found that leaders who were more speedy, they were in the 75th percentile, were twice as effective as other leaders. So we found it had a dramatic impact on the success of a leader. What we did was we also measured trust. And what the graph we're showing you now is from 84,000 leaders. But it shows the correlation between the speed at which a leader works and how trusted they are. So the least trusted leaders in the 1st to the 9th percentile, the most trusted leaders are in the 90th to 100th percentile. And you can see that beautiful, beautiful curve there, that the higher trust you have, the more speed you have, and the more speed people recognize you have, because these are the ratings of others. So that's one of the real advantages of trust, is it increases the speed at which work gets done.
So we want to look a little bit more at trust in the workplace, and we've got some really interesting data to help us do that. The first one here is from a gentleman, Paul Zak, and he's an American neuroeconomist. And I had to look that up. But basically, that's just using neuroscience to understand consumer decisions. But his team, what they decided to do is really look at how trust plays a factor and in terms of looking at high trust companies versus low trust companies. So they went in and they conducted this research where they calculated the level of trust for several organizations, and then they compared the top quartile or high trust companies to the bottom quartile, or what they define as low trust companies. And what was interesting is they found that employees who are in those high trust companies indicated that when compared to employees at the low trust companies, they had things like reported 40% less burnout, 66% more closeness with colleagues, 106% more energy, 70% more alignment with the company's purpose. And this last one I found really interesting, 17% higher compensation than peers in low trust companies. So if you work for a high trust company, on average, they found that they made 17% more money.
That's a good reason.
That's a good, that's what you need. If you're looking for a job, you just ask the company you're applying with, are you a high trust company? But the interesting thing there is the only way that really works in a competitive environment to pay employees more is if those employees are productive and innovative, right? That's how they can be paid more and the company remains successful.
106% more energy. I mean, as people distrust, they go, well, why should I work hard?
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to screw me. They're going to take advantage of me. So that's that logic that takes the wind out of their sails. You know, and another thing we did is we were interested in how well you could predict the level of trust that you have. So here's what we did. This is not a small study. We had 83,000 self-assessments of trust and over 1 million assessments by others, boss, peers, direct reports, and others, okay? And the statistic we used to measure this was the percent of variance accounted for, which is basically when we correlate your rating to the overall rating, how good is the correlation? What we found is that the self-correlation only predicted 8.88% of the variance, whereas the ratings from bosses, peers, direct reports, or others predicted 28.62% of the variance, 3.2 times higher. You know what that basically says, Jared? We haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
We think, oh, everybody trusts me. They don't. And in fact, I think this is the problem is the people that are least trusted think they're the most trusted, and the people that are the most trusted, rate them. They say, well, people probably don't trust me as much. So it was very off. We did another study where we looked at the impact of trust. And we looked at two variables, trust and communicates powerfully. Now, again, this is a study with 103,000 leaders, so it's a big study. Now, if you think about it, and if you think about you as a leader and you have a high level of trust, everybody trusts you. It's a great thing, but you're not a great communicator. You have a hard time getting a message out, and you do a lousy job of it. What we did is we looked at the overall effectiveness rating, and we looked at those people who were in the top 10%. And we found out that if you were highly trusted, but not a great communicator, there was a whopping 2% chance that you'd be a great leader. Now, this whole webinar is about trust. So you'd think I'd have a better statistic here, wouldn't you? I mean, that's really pathetic. I mean, it's like it doesn't do anything for you, does it? I mean, if you're a good communicator, on the other hand, but you aren't very good at trust, there's actually a 17% chance you'd be a great leader. So that's significantly better. But wonder if you're good at both. And if you're good at both, you'd expect 19%, but you actually get 80%. What that is we call it a powerful combination. And what we found with trust is that's when we talk about this salt and sugar. I remember when I was a kid and we were having cantaloupe one night, and my dad's sitting at the table. and he's got a piece of cantaloupe in front of him. He says, "Pass the salt." And I'm like, "What?" He says, "Pass the salt." I'm going, "That's cantaloupe." But he salted his cantaloupe, and wow. Yeah, and I tried it too, and I thought, wow, it really enhances. Now this explains my high blood pressure, but and I'm not really advocating the health benefits of salt and sugar here, but what I am advocating is how they enhance everything. And what this current graph we're showing you shows you that if you mix trust with any one of those competencies, you get this powerful combination. It enhances everything. And so trust does a good job of really making a leader a lot better. Without trust, you think about a communicator. He's brilliant or she's brilliant, says all the right things in the right way and powerful. And you're going, wow, that's amazing. But you go, it's weasel. I mean, right? And it doesn't matter what they say because you're sitting back going, I don't trust them.
Yeah.
So it takes the wind out of the sails, or it enhances everything. And so that's that impact of trust.
It's really powerful capability. So we want to ask you some questions here and show you some additional Zenger-Folkman data. So here the poll is, who do you think is more trusted? And you've got the choice, top managers, senior managers, or supervisors. So we'll let you weigh in. Who do you think is more trusted?
Wow, this is a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, so we got the results coming in, and looks like people are leaning a little bit more for the supervisors. So we'll show you here. We'll jump over to our results. And sure enough, you see that supervisors were at the 56th percentile on trust, where top managers only at the 48th percentile. Joe, why do you think supervisors out trusted the top managers?
A part of trust, and we're going to talk about this, is your supervisor, and you don't have as good a relationship oftentimes with top management, and so you've heard stories, right, and all that other stuff. So I think that's part of it is the relationship you have with your supervisor.
Okay, so the next question that we have for you now is who is more trusted, men or women?
Ooh.
Results are anonymous, so we'll just put that out there. All right, so we see some results coming in, and it looks like in this case, people are trending a little bit more towards women being more trusted. Should we show them the results, Joe?
Oh, this is going to be nasty.
And drum roll, pretty even. So you see that the percentile overall for trust for both men and women is right there, 51st percentile.
We dodged that bullet, didn't we?
Okay, let's do one more of these. And now, who is more trusted, the younger colleagues or your older colleagues?
Those whippersnappers?
Yep.
Or
the old timers or the young whippersnappers?
Codgers.
All right, so it looks like people here are leaning a little bit more towards the older colleagues. And let's show you the results here. And this one was probably the most surprising to me, which is that the younger colleagues overall come in at the 57th percentile for trust, or older colleagues at the 50th percentile. So we've got those young whippersnappers tend to have a little bit more trust than their older colleagues. Why do you think that is, Joe?
Well, one of the other factors that we found affects trust is technical expertise and knowledge, and especially with all this technology that's coming along. I mean, if you want to know how to get your iPhone to work, you don't go to the old codgers. So that could be part of it. The other part of it could be that older people may be in higher management positions. So we saw that there's this correlation. So
yeah,
it's the two things.
So one last study we just want to show is this study here based on about 87,000 leaders, where we're correlating now. The earlier one we show very similar slope, but it had trust versus overall kind of leadership speed. Now we're looking at trust and overall leadership effectiveness. And so you can see trust is very positively correlated with overall leadership effectiveness. So if you're a low trust leader, you're probably not a very good leader. You can see you're at the 14th percentile for overall leadership effectiveness if you're in that bottom 10th percentile for trust. And where if you're a high trust leader, then you're overall a pretty good leader, which matches up really well about trust being this key factor that can really determine overall leadership effectiveness, really bring out all the flavors of your personal leadership strengths.
Imagine yourself, Jared, you're in a session where they're giving people out 360 feedback, and you give some feedback to someone, and they sit down with you and they say, well, look at this, and they show you the feedback, and on this trust index, it's very, very low. And the supervisor looks at you and says, what do I do? And having had this experience so many times, because I've never had a person look at me and say, I know why that is. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've never had somebody go, yeah, I get that. That's always just this confusion around, wow, they don't trust me. And let me tell you, when I see that low, that's a red flag. That is such a red flag for me. And so if you talk to people and you say, all right, people don't trust you, what are you going to do? And they often say, well, just tell people they can trust me.
Trust me.
Trust me. Or, some people say, well, you should dress like a banker or wear a bow tie. Jared, you wear a bow tie.
I do. I do have some bow ties. And people trust me more when I wear a bow tie. There's something that just lets them be more vulnerable around bow ties. I don't know. Or smile more. I mean, what we're trying to demonstrate is the futility of this issue. I mean, people really don't know what to do, and they would go to changing their dress or whatever. Our experience is those things don't work, and so the question is, what really works? What would help you build trust? And what we did is we looked at lots of data. We actually looked at data from 87,000 leaders. This is a global database. And we analyzed the data. We looked at people who were the most trusted and the least trusted. And then we tried to find the connections. And what we found is there's 3 elements that must be present to build trust. And the 3 elements are positive relationships, exercising expertise and good judgment, and demonstrating consistency. Now, we're going to talk about those 3 things. Let's talk about positive relationships. The extent to which a leader is able to create positive relationships with other groups or people. Now, if you don't like someone, you probably don't trust them. And I mean, that's really clear, isn't it? Because somebody you kind of grates at you a little bit, or all of a sudden you start to kind of, that really affects the trust. And what we found is that people that are good at this stay in touch with issues and concerns with others. They balance results with concerns for others. They generate cooperation and resolve conflict. They even give positive feedback. So a big part of trust is about the relationship you have. Now, we're going to look at this a lot because we actually find that this has a lot of power, this particular capability. And it's interesting if you think about when, this aspect of positive relationships is absent, but the other 2 are present. You may have somebody who's good at their job and kind of consistently seeks the right results, but is that person that's leaving a lot of bodies in the wake, right? Mm-hmm. And their focus on results or process really outweighs the need to develop others, understand others, effectively use feedback. And that's definitely not someone we're inclined to trust.
Yep.
All right, so this next one, exercise expertise and good judgment. This is the extent to which a leader is really well informed and knowledgeable, and is able to use kind of their technical expertise and understanding to really do the right things, make the right decisions. And so you think about this is someone, people trust their ideas, they go to them and really respect their advice and their opinions. Their knowledge and expertise make an important contribution to getting results done. And these people can kind of anticipate and respond quickly to problems. This is another one too. If you think about, so when this is absent, so maybe if you have someone that has the other two, but this one's absent, you have someone that is caring, they're good at relationships, and maybe they're pretty good at being consistent, but their activities are just not hitting the mark. They're just not good enough. And oftentimes we don't trust that person because just the results aren't there. That expertise isn't there. And what's a little bit scary is we might not be as vocal about it with this person because they're probably a nice person, just not getting things done. Expertise
is another element. It builds trust. And when people have expertise, we're more likely to trust them.
Yep.
The third one really is, I think, the one that people think of first when they think of trust, and it's this consistency. Now, consistency has these two elements in it. It's the extent to which people walk their talk and do what they say will do. So there's this being a good role model and setting a good example and walking the talk, and that's the kind of the honesty. And if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. But then this other part of it, which is really critical, which is I honor my commitments. If I say something's going to be done, it's going to be done. And you follow through on your commitments. So it is, there's people that we kind of say, well, they're honest, but they don't, they don't really, they say they're going to get something, they don't get it done. That doesn't work. And so we call it consistency here because it's that this person's always going to come through, always going to deliver. They are really great at this stuff. And so that's those three elements, and we're going to talk about them: building relationships, exercising good judgment, expertise and good judgment, and demonstrating consistency. And as you think about those three, let's do a little poll here, Jared.
Okay, so we want to know from you, the audience, which of these three do you think makes the most difference? So we've told you they're all important. We've kind of explained and gone through them all. But which, if you were to pick one, which do you think is going to make the most difference of the three? So, all right, we got some results coming in. So a tight race, race.
Yeah.
So let's thank you for participating, and let's show you some of the data that Joe has pulled together on how these three kind of answer this question: which of the three actually do make the most difference?
When I talk to people about this, I said, what do you think? What do you think is the most? And in my kind of informal survey, people said, well, consistency. That's number one. So now this is a little bit confusing. This study is so confusing, a little bit, but I'm just going to show it to you anyway because you're very brilliant people. So we looked at these three variables: relationships, judgment, consistency. And then we looked at high performance, and high isn't really too high here. It's 60th percentile or higher, and low performance is 40th percentile or lower. So we're just sort of saying, are you kind of 10 points above average or 10 points below average? And again, if you were low on the three variables, your trust index in our study, and this is again with thousands and thousands of leaders, your trust score would be at the 20th percentile. So you wouldn't be very trusted. Now, if you were consistent, if you had high consistency, low relationships, low judgment, you'd move to the 32nd percentile. So that would help you. If you were high judgment, it would increase a little bit more. You'd go to the 36th percentile. But look what happens if you this is the one that kills me, high relationships, low judgment, low consistency, right? You jump above average. What that's saying to me is, wow, that relationship thing is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing, Jared, and you mentioned this, if people don't think you're considerate or don't think you care about them, they're not going to trust you, right? But see, and if you can keep going through the chart, then you say, well, low relationships, it goes to the 48th, and then low judgment, it goes to the 59th. Low consistency, it goes to the 63rd. If you do all things well, 3 things well, your trust is at the 80th percentile. Now, well here, remember, is 60th percentile, just 10 points above average. What this helped us to see is the power of these 3 elements in building trust. So if all 3 of these are the 60th percentile or higher, your trust score is at the 80th percentile. If all 3 of these are the 40th percentile or lower, your trust score is at the 40th percentile. And what we've made out of this is this whole issue of, if you could improve your trust, which thing would you like to work on? Now, this is why we gave you the self-assessment. Jared, tell us a little bit about what they're going to see.
So now, if you haven't already done so, you can go check your email, and you should have received your results by now. The subject line will be your Trifecta of Trust survey results, and that will have come from a zfco.com email address. And so you go ahead and pull that up, and it'll be an attachment, a PDF and an attachment. So the most important thing to kind of remember when reviewing your results is that they really represent your preference, not your proficiency. And so in this assessment, we're measuring your preference between these 3 trust behaviors, and the total possible score here is 48. And so this is divided up between the behaviors based on the rank order response that you gave to each of the questions, the statements as you went throughout the survey. And so you're able to see your preference score for each kind of compared to the others. And so it's really kind of, you could have an even score across the board if you equally chose all 3, but it's kind of impossible to have a high score in all 3 because it was a forced ranking. So it's possible then that you're going to have, what you're going to see is that you ended up having higher preference in one of the behaviors than in the other 2.
So we know that if you prefer something, you tend to be better at it. And so what we'd like to think about is, all right, so here's the takeaway part where we challenge you to sort of say, okay, what could you do to build your trust? And given what we said already about the impact of trust and how it's the salt and sugar for every competency, how it enhances every competency, I think if anybody built their trust, it would help them to be a better leader.
So we have a quick poll here too, now that you've got your results and had a second to look at it. This one is a word cloud. So you all know how word clouds work. What we're asking is just to share one word or an emoji that represents your reaction to your results. So thank you. We see some of these coming in, and we see some smiley faces.
Oh, I love the emojis.
Got some good emojis, some thumbs up. Somebody says, interesting. And there's always food emojis. Yeah. And maybe it's because this is around lunchtime.
No,
all right.
It's the salt.
It's the salt and the sugar. It's the salt and the sugar. Very good. Very good. All right. So thank you for participating in that. And we hope that that getting your results gave you some interesting insights into your own preferences.
In our experience, what we find is that people are very busy, and to sort of ask them to work on 3 things simultaneously is kind of hard. So if you could focus your efforts on one, it helps. So the first criteria you might think about is the lowest score. Again, Jared said this, and I said it too. There's a high correlation between your preference and your effectiveness typically. Not always, but typically, and we find there's a pretty good correlation there. So a high score would indicate you're probably better at that particular thing. And if one of these was lower and it was kind of an issue for you, you'd probably have a lower preference score. The second thing I'd like you to think about is which one of these things would have the most impact if it were improved. And I'd have to say that this trumps the first criteria of the lowest score. If you look at those three things and say, well, in my group right now, the thing that would really make a difference is building relationships. Or if you said it's expertise, I'm not I don't really understand as much about my particular job as I should, and I'd like to kind of get deeper and really understand more. So choose the one that's going to have the highest impact, and maybe it's also got the lowest score. You see a poll coming up, and interestingly enough, what we'd like you to do is let us know which one you've chosen to work on. So this will be interesting just to see the one you've chosen, and then do you have company around that? I see where, oh boy, the votes are coming in, Jared.
Yep.
Well, we're getting a lot of relationships there, but,
yep.
But consistency, judgment, okay. Well, again, what we want to do at this point is to help you in that development process. And so we're going to talk about these three things: relationship building, exercising expertise and good judgment, and consistency, and give you some tips about what you could do to build relationships and the other two. So let's talk about relationships first. One of the ways you can really improve your ability to build relationships is by becoming a coach or helping others develop. Think about a person that's really been a mentor or coach to you. How do you feel about that person? I can think about Gene Dalton. He's a good friend of mine who took me under his wing. I love Gene, and he did some great things for me. And you know, if you think about somebody who you've helped develop, there's usually a positive relationship there. Second thing is inspiring and motivating others. Naturally, what we're good at is pushing. What we're not so good at is pulling. Getting people excited about something, getting people enthusiastic about something, creating a positive emotional connection with others. That's that inspirational ability, and that helps build relationships. The third thing is cooperate rather than compete. When we went through school, we got ahead by doing better than our colleagues, by differentiating from our colleagues. In business, the thing that's going to get us ahead is cooperation with our colleagues, is working together, is working as a unit. And oftentimes our relationships are bad because we haven't created those connections with our colleagues. They're not working with us, they're working against us. The last thing is to ask for feedback. What we find is if you ask for feedback, you'll get some good feedback. And oftentimes it'll help you be a better leader.
So moving on to exercising expertise and good judgment, the companion behaviors here, so the things that are going to help you develop this capability of exercising expertise and good judgment. First there you see be a role model and walk your talk. And a lot of this we talked about, this kind of generally that keeping commitments and doing what you say you will do. But in terms of exercising expertise and good judgment, really demonstrate your love of learning and your pursuit of expertise and excellence. Bring others into your decision-making process and have them observe and even participate in practicing good judgment and how you do that and in how you kind of follow and develop best practices. The next one here, keeping others informed. Every leader gets busy, and it's so easy to just assume that everyone knows what's going on and what changes have been made. But sometimes we need to take the time to really not only inform and share the changes and what's going on, but take the time to also listen and understand everyone's point of view. The third one, connect work to vision and direction. Sometimes we really just get caught up in the day-to-day and forget to connect kind of these details to the big picture. And employees are going to have much greater trust when they understand, and even when they see you demonstrate that you not that you just know how to row the boat, but that you know where this boat is headed. The last one, anticipate problems. And so using expertise and good judgment can really help to find problems, see the potential challenges, and then really take advantage of that to be able to solve those and use that as an opportunity for positive change. And often leaders and teams that have this skill set, that can recognize and solve problems quickly, have a high degree of trust in their organization.
Jared, what advice would you give to a manager who may be put into a role where they're not the expert, they don't have tons of expertise in a particular area, and their direct reports tend to have more expertise? What would you say to them around this? Is there a way for them to still do this well?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And, it's interesting. I think in today's day and age, the manager doesn't necessarily have to be the end all be all expert of the team. And so they, their ability, even looking at some of these things to leverage their team to anticipate problems and help keep each other informed, can leverage expertise across the entire team. And what they're responsible for is the cohesion of the team versus knowing more than anyone else on the team.
I think that's a great answer. And I talked to a leader once. He had a really high score in technical professional expertise. And I said, wow, you really must be an expert. He says, I don't know diddly. I said, well, how do you get this high score? He said, well, my direct reports do. And I just learned who knows what. And I call in him and I give him, I say, okay, Joe knows this and Bill knows this and Jay knows this. And he says, people think I have expertise but I'm really using their expertise. And I think that's just a lovely example, because a lot of times, we feel like we need to be the expert. Mm-hmm. You don't. Mm-hmm. We need to kind of get the right information and be the conduit of that if you don't have it. The third thing is consistency. And one of the things that's going to help you to be and improve your consistency is collaboration with others. If you don't have collaborative working relationships and people are going in different directions, then you're going to find you're inconsistent because your group is doing something in another group, and you're going to say we're going to go in Y direction. They go, well, no, we're going in X direction. People need to be united, and organizations are more successful when people work together. And so collaboration helps with consistency. The second thing is to deliver on commitments. Now, one of the things that I think is critical here is, sometimes commitments are handed out and you go, yeah, I'll do it. But I really admire people who push back. And they say, when do you need that? They're not as quick to sort of agree to something before they really understand it and they really are clear about what they're agreeing to. And I just think that makes a big difference, because when we're too quick to agree and say, yeah, I'll do it, and then we don't do it, that hurts so much, and people don't come through with their commitments. Insisting on high standards also helps a lot. And it sets the precedent that you're not going to be satisfied with mediocre. And the last thing is this continuous improvement, trying to do better, trying to do more, trying to move stuff along more quickly. Again, it helps with the how people see you as being consistent.
So Joe had mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we do want to provide you a deliverable today. And to go along with the transmission analogy, it's really easy when you're sitting in the car. Well, if you've got an automatic transmission, you don't even have to think about it. But if you're, in the old manual transmission, very clear, it shows you up for one, down for two. And so we want to provide you a similar kind of direction. So what does it look like as you leverage these behaviors and then these companion behaviors to be able to develop trust? And so this document will show you each of these companion behaviors for these three elements of trust and provide you some kind of high-level descriptions of some actions that you could consider or take. as you look to leverage that companion behavior to build relationships or demonstrate expertise or be more consistent. So this will be included in a follow-up email that will go out after this webinar so that you'll be able to download this.
And what's great about these kind of tips, they're oftentimes they're not exactly right, but they're in the ballpark. And what we think people can do is very quickly read down through theirs, identify the 2 or 3 things that they'll do, and all of a sudden, in 5 minutes, they have a development plan that is actionable. And this is all based on research, not sort of our intuition. This is based on our research about what helps you build these particular skills and competencies.
So before we close it up, I also just want to put up on the screen here that we really value your feedback and your interest in our webinars and the topics that we provide on a monthly basis. And so you see here, there is a survey on the screen, and you can take that survey at bit.ly/ZFMay19. Again, that's case sensitive, and we'll also put the link in the chat window so you can just click it there. Short, only 5 questions, and we want to get a sense of how valuable you found the content today. And also, if this is a topic that you're interested in for your organization, maybe you have an upcoming event or meeting, and you would love Joe to come speak on this. It's an opportunity there for you to reach out to us and have some additional conversations. We're also going to be giving away 10 copies of our book, How to Be Exceptional. And we'll be doing that as a drawing for those that complete the survey. So just let me give you a thank you ahead of time for your participation and your input there. And we will leave this link up on the screen through these final slides.
So one last comment here. And by the way, if you want to have a really dynamic speaker, have Jared come and speak to you. So can people improve their trust? We have data from 919 leaders, and we measured them pre-test. About 18 months later, we did a post-test, and we saw a significant. What we know is people can, if you do these things, you can really change your level of trust they moved from the 31st percentile to the 67th percentile. So it can be done.
And to me, this is of all the data that we've showed, this is my favorite one of all, because I think fundamental to what we believe here at Zenger Folkman is that leaders can change. And so here you have proof, even something like trust that kind of demystify it a little bit, identify these 3 critical behaviors, and then now to be able to have results that show, your leaders can get better at this, and not just better, can be above average.
And the funny thing is when you said, well, what were they doing? They were doing these companion behaviors that really enabled them to build the trust. They were building the relationships or increasing their consistency or increasing their expertise. And that really, those are the gears.
Yep.
Those are the gears.
We're going to end with Peter Drucker. Leadership is an achievement of trust. And we strongly believe that trust inside a company can start with its leaders. And so we thank you for your interest in this topic and desire to build trust for yourself personally, trust in your organization. Thank you for joining us and wanting to make your organization a more inspiring place to work.